Hi, I'm Forrest. Thanks for joining me. In this video, I'd like to talk about my most recent books on the subject of improvisation. They're called Create First, and they were published in 2017. Now, this series uses the same approach that my previous collections of books on improvisation used, and these books were called Pattern Play. Why did I create a new series? And why do I recommend that teachers and students generally start with Create First and then explore Pattern Play? Well, there's a number of reasons I created the new Create First series. The number one being I wanted more beginning level pieces that not only beginners could enjoy, but more experienced players. I also wanted to finally have a Pattern Play series that was not just physical books, but would use modern technology to allow me to instantly send low-priced PDFs to teachers and students in countries all around the world. I wanted to create a series that had a video with each piece, so teachers and students anywhere could click on a button and have me there at a piano demonstrating how to do things. Another reason I created a new series is that I wanted to organize the books so that they gave teachers a way to introduce all the basic materials of music, scales, intervals, and chords, and all keys, in a musical, enjoyable, and creative way. So here's a list of the pieces in the first two books and the topics explored. Book 1 begins with playing on black keys and explores basic elements of musicality, such as consonance and dissonance, elements of rhythm, and articulation. And then the next section is all about various scales and getting to know them by creating music with the sounds. C major and the various A minor scales are introduced, as well as the A blues scale and the C major blues scale. In addition, the student is introduced to all the white key modes. In Book 2, the student learns to hear and play intervals by creating music with them in imaginative pieces such as Pagoda, Cuba, and Twilight Zone. And then the student learns about chords and inversions by improvising with them. I also really wanted to have a series in which at each level there's a duet book to be used by the teacher in the lesson and a solo book to be used by the student at home once he or she could read music at a basic level. The secret of teaching improvisation to beginners is playing duets with them, something I wish I'd realized much sooner in my life. Here's why. Think of how nearly all of us are accomplished improvisers when it comes to speaking with words. We developed this ability because our parents and others talked with us day after day from the time we're born and continued doing this for many years. Our hidden ability to speak was drawn out of us by constant interaction with many others. In the same way, when we play duets with students in each lesson, they soon consider it to be quite natural and normal to talk with tones. And so, in each lesson, I improvise at least one duet with the student. Here's an example of what this is like. I'm playing here the first piece in the first Create First book. It's called Sunrise. I simply say to the student, play with me on black keys, or make sounds with me using black keys. And then we start. Duet playing creates such a rich and supportive environment for exploration, and you can do things together that you can't do alone. So the Create First books are all about duets in the lesson and then slowly helping the student learn to play solo so they can do that at home. The duet book might also be used by a parent with a child, or by two students, or by a music therapist and a client. Though a person could learn to improvise using just the solo book, The duet to solo approach is a proven method for successfully teaching and learning improvisation. So let's look inside the Duet 1 book and see how the pattern play approach works. Let's look at For the Joy, the fourth piece in the book, which explores rhythm and 4/4 time. In each piece in the duet book, there's a top part and a bottom part, the bottom part being played usually by the teacher. The bottom person plays a short repeating accompaniment pattern called a pattern, and it's marked with the capital letter P. A pattern usually has 12 or fewer notes, so it can be learned quickly and memorized quickly. Any repeat sign means to repeat as many times as you like, and the entire pattern can be repeated as many times as you like. After a while, the pattern needs to change, so there's always a contrasting accompaniment pattern called a vacation, marked with a V. You can repeat this as many times as you like before returning to the pattern. Back and forth you go. You're encouraged to vary the pattern and the vacation in response to what the top person is playing. So on each page there are suggestions of ways you might vary the accompaniment patterns. The book is designed so that the top person doesn't have to read music or words. The idea is that the teacher or person on the bottom will simply read what is there and tell the student what to do. In this case, the teacher tells the student to create sounds with me using the black keys. The teacher encourages the student to start with a repeating rhythm pattern, such as 4/4 notes. So this is a typical page in the duet book. And this is an example of what might be created with this. My duet partner begins by playing more like a beginner, and then shows what an intermediate or advanced student might do with this piece. So play with me using any black key. Why don't you start with a simple rhythm such as this, and just see where it takes you. So now, what about the solo book? When the student is ready to improvise solo, and this may be months or even a year later, the teacher helps the student learn to play the solo version of the same piece, the one shown in the solo book, which is different from the duet version. Let's look at For the Joy in the solo book, the piece we just saw played as a duet. Here's the pattern for playing solo. As you can see, it's just a simple left-hand accompaniment, so the student can later add improvised melodies with their right hand. I'd like to show you how I usually introduce and teach the solo pattern to a student, especially a student who doesn't read music comfortably. I finish playing the duet with them, and then, well, let me show you what I do. Hey, I want to play the top part. So can you play F sharp to C sharp, and then F sharp to B? Good. I think you're ready to start adding some sounds with your right hand on black keys. As you can see, I play the duet and then say, I want to play the top part. The student and I change places, and then I teach the student to play the solo accompaniment with their left hand while I play along. In this way, the student is learning by playing with the teacher at every step. The student learns to play the solo pattern and then play both hands together so they can play solo at home. I would then teach them the vacation in the same way. In the solo books, there's one other section entitled C, which stands for Create. This section gives ideas on ways to create and is designed to be used by students at home who read music at a basic level. So first it says to create on black keys, then some suggestions about rhythms to play. Here's an example of what that might look like. The student is told that all those sharps simply mean to play the notes on black keys, and then the notation is pretty easy to grasp, just quarter notes and half notes. And another idea to try. And so here's how the piece sounds played solo. That's the basic approach to be used with all the pieces in the book. Let's look at a piece that is toward the end of the book now, one that introduces the A blues scale. The piece is called Cool. So here's the pattern played by the bottom person in the duet, and here's the vacation, and some suggestions on how to vary the pattern. The top person is encouraged to create melodies with the A blues scale. It's always a good approach to ask the student to start creating with just the first 4 notes of the scale first, and then add in the other notes of the scale when ready. Here's some ways that the teacher might demonstrate to the student ways of playing the scale using pairs of notes. And that's all that's needed for quite a nice duet. Using just these 4 notes, A, C, D, and E flat. A 1, 2, here we go. Oh my gosh, you need more notes already, don't you? So why don't we add E, G, and A? And then that becomes what's called a blues scale, and you can play that all over the piano. Right, a 1, 2, here we go. Now let's look at the solo version. The pattern played by the student is just a simple walking bass line. It's what the teacher was playing in the duet version. The vacation is a contrasting bass line. Or in the Create section, the student is encouraged to create with the A blues scale. And then given some ideas on how to create. Book 2 uses the same approach, but now we explore various intervals and then various chords. So let's look at the first piece in the solo book, which explores thirds. It's called Taking the Path I Love. You play the pattern and then vary the rhythm of the notes. So here's an example of how that might sound. Then you also create with the thirds that are right above the written thirds. This helps the student learn to hear the difference between chord tones and non-chord tones, between consonants and dissonance. Then the student creates with the thirds right below the written thirds. So now they're creating with both lower and upper neighbors. In Pagoda, the left hand plays a simple accompaniment made of 2/5, while the right hand plays fourths, any fourth that does not have an F in it. In the vacation, you play on black keys and pairs of black keys that are either fourths or thirds. In Twilight Zone, we create with whole steps and half steps. Ocean Without a Shore explores playing root position chords all over the piano. The piece Journey is all about creating with chords in first inversion. The piece Flux encourages us to create with all the various inversions of C, F, and G. Future Create First books will go into other keys and explore more complex harmonies. Enjoy creating.